welcome to another video. You've got Mr. Everything English. Today guys, our focus is shifting. Our focus is shifting to the English literature exam. And we are looking at probably one of the most popular taught texts at GCSE, and this is A Christmas Carol. Guys, in the English literature exam, you are given 45 minutes to answer one question on A Christmas Carol. And for the Christmas Carol question, you are given an extract and you are expected to talk about the extract and the whole text. Now, in your 45 minutes, you are expected to write anywhere between 3 to 5 paragraphs. I advise 4 paragraphs. So in 45 minutes, you are doing 4 paragraphs. You are doing 2 paragraphs on the extract, 2 paragraphs on the whole text. That's how I teach students to answer this question. However, guys, in this video, we are going to imagine that there is no extract. So what we're going to do, guys, is we're going to think of a question. So for example, it could be, how is Scrooge presented? How does Scrooge change? Imagine you were given a question around the character of Scrooge. I'm going to give you 4 points that you can use as the basis of 4 paragraphs for this essay. I will then give you 4 quotes that you can use to support these 4 points. And then guys, I will show you my analysis of these 4 quotes. So essentially guys, by the end of this video, you will have 4 paragraphs built up for a question on Scrooge. Now, some of the quotes that we're going to cover, guys, some of them are complicated, some of them are basic. Now remember one thing, guys, a quote is just a quote. How you make a quote good is through your analysis. What do you say about that quote? Okay, so guys, hopefully by the end of this video, you have a good amount that you can use for an essay on the character of Scrooge. And even if you can't use all 4 points, you might be able to use 3 or 2, depending upon what particular question you are given on the day. All right, guys, let's now switch to the board and we shall go over all of the 4 quotes, 4 points, and the different analysis that you can make for these quotes. Okay guys, so the first quote that we will be using is the quote, solitary as an oyster, which is a very, very, very popular quote when it comes to the play, A Christmas Carol. Now, what can I say as my point? Imagine guys, the question was, in the text, Christmas Carol, how is Scrooge presented? What could I use as my point for this question? I'm going to say, guys, that in this quote, Scrooge is presented as being lonely. That's correct, but at the moment, it's a little bit too basic. I'm going to then take it further and talk about how this is a forced loneliness. It's not voluntary. I'll explain how in a second. So my point, guys, is something about the idea that Scrooge is a character who's a very lonely character, but he's not lonely because he wants to be lonely. He's forced to be lonely. And then I'm going to explain how. Now guys, this here would count as AO1 because this would be my point. This quote over here, guys, this would also count as AO1 because this is my reference to the text. Now let's analyze and talk about the quote specifically. If we were analyzing this quote, guys, let's start off by talking about the word solitary. If you're solitary, guys, yes, you are lonely. However, this word, guys, it has connotations of being locked up because it links to the idea of prison. Somebody who is in solitary confinement, they are almost being put into prison. So Scrooge is lonely. Scrooge is lonely because he feels as though, or he's presented as though, he's locked up, like somebody in prison. Now, how can I prove that even further? Then we have to look at the noun oyster. Guys, a noun oyster is hard on the outside, soft on the inside, and on the soft is where the important part of the oyster lies. Now we want to get an even higher grade now. Oyster, this hard shell on the outside, it's a simile, right? Guys, we all know this is a simile, right? It's saying that Scrooge is lonely, Scrooge is confined, Scrooge is locked up, Scrooge is shut off from the rest of the world, just the way the oyster is. Why is an oyster shut off from the rest of the world? It's because it has a hard outer shell. It's because it has a hard outer shell. Now, we can't say that Scrooge has a literal hard outer shell. It doesn't make sense. It's not correct. So what could be this outer shell that's confining Scrooge, that's controlling Scrooge, that's making Scrooge behave in a particular way? I would argue that a very good point to make here is that the hard shell that is controlling Scrooge, guys, I would make an AO3 point. For me, guys, it is capitalism. Guys, for me, it is capitalism. Capitalism is the belief that the only thing that matters in life is yourself and money, profit. You could argue here, guys, that this hard outer shell is the belief that a Scrooge has been indoctrinated to believe. He's lonely, he's locked up, metaphorically, because he begins to put things as being important that shouldn't really be important. All he cares about is work and money, himself, work, money, himself. And therefore, without realizing, capitalism has created a hard outer shell where other people don't want to know him, where he's put off so many other relationships because he's become locked up in the shell of capitalism. He's become almost immersed in the pursuit of making money and only taking care of himself. Guys, this is a profound point you can make. Let's recap so we don't get lost. The quote, solitary as an oyster, it doesn't say lonely as an oyster. The writer uses the language specifically. The word solitary, yes, it means you're lonely, but it doesn't mean you're lonely as in, I'm sitting at home and my friends don't reply to me on WhatsApp. It means you're lonely because you've almost been locked up. You've almost been forced to be lonely. However, in this text, we can't physically see what or who has locked up Scrooge. So we're going to use our grade 9 inference and we're going to say that because the writer chooses the noun oyster, hard on the outside, soft on the inside, this hard outer layer that controls Scrooge, that doesn't show us the real Scrooge, is capitalism. Because he's been indoctrinated into the belief that the only thing that he should care about is money and himself. Alright guys, that is our AO3 link. Now we got to take it further. An oyster, guys, an oyster is soft on the inside. So now we bring in the other characters. Now we bring in the ghosts or the spirits, and we talk about the idea how they crack the shell. Guys, they crack the hard outer layer. That is what these characters do. They chip and they chip and they chip and they chip away. But don't say they crack the shell of the oyster. Because remember, that shell is a symbol of capitalism. They chip away at the belief of capitalism that Scrooge holds. By the end of the text, he's not in love with money. He's not obsessed with working. He's not even obsessed with himself. He cares about other people. He cares about Tiny Tim, and he cares about his friends and his family, because they've broken that shell of the oyster, which represented capitalism. Now, I am not saying this is the only way you can analyze this quote, but it's a very good way of analyzing the quote, guys. Solitary as an oyster. And we can argue, guys, that in A Christmas Carol, Scrooge is presented as a very lonely character. However, this loneliness is not voluntary, it is forced. And you want to make a point. It is forced, however, Scrooge doesn't see that. Full stop. This can be seen through the quote, solitary as an oyster. Here the writer, and then you talk about this analysis. That is one paragraph that you can do. Now guys, obviously you can't talk about all of this in one paragraph. It's probably too much. But when you're building your paragraph, you might say, you know what, I'm going to talk about that word there, I'm going to talk about that word there, and that is enough to build my paragraph. But here is one quote, one point, and one potential analysis that you can use when talking about how Scrooge is a lonely character. However, this loneliness is forced, yet he thinks it is by his own choice. He thinks he's free. He thinks that by earning money and by becoming massively rich, that is his freedom. but all it does is it makes him more and more and more lonely. That is paragraph 1 complete. For paragraph number 2, this is the quote that I have selected. And this is a quote that is describing society. The quote reads as follows. It was a smooth white sheet of snow upon the roof, and with the dirtier snow upon the ground. Now you might be thinking, sir, this quote is about snow. How can we use this quote and link it back to Scrooge? Our first point was Scrooge is a character who is forced to be lonely and he doesn't even realize it. Our second point, using this quote, guys, Scrooge is a character. Remember now, this is a massive theme throughout the text. Scrooge is a character who embodies, that's the point you make, guys, he embodies capitalism and shows the injustice of society. We learn all of this to the character of Scrooge. We learn about the massive divide between the rich and the poor through the character of Scrooge. We learn how certain people of certain class were able to get away with certain things through the character of Scrooge. But then it got me thinking, what's the best quote to use for this? And this quote, guys, is one of my favorite. This here, guys, would be my point. So that would be A1. And this would be my reference. So this would be A01. Guys, in this quote, there's one thing that I will talk about now. I will talk about how in this quote, the snow is symbolic. Because the snow is symbolic of the people. The snow is symbolic of the people in that society. Let's read the quote again. On the roof, there was a smooth white sheet of snow. Now, guys, look, roof here represents the upper part of a building. So, now guys, you might be thinking, sir, you're waffling. Guys, keep with me because I think this is an excellent point. Guys, you want to make a point that the roof represents the upper part of a building. The snow represents the people. Guys, the snow is a symbol for the people. This snow is smooth. Therefore, guys, it implies that the rich, that the upper class, they live very comfortable lives. Smooth snow has no footprints. Can you guys see that? Yep. Guys, smooth snow, it has no footprints. No one's ruined it. No one's touched it. It's perfect. So, the life of these rich people is perfect, guys. The life of these rich people is easy on the surface. On the surface. The life of these rich people, just the way the snow is untouched, so is the life of these people. Now, it's important, guys, that we see the snow on the ground straight after, because it creates an image of like a roof of smooth snow looking down at the contrast below it. So, whilst the snow upon the roof is untouched, is beautiful, on the ground, this snow, where is it? Guys, this snow is dirty. This snow is getting trampled upon all the time. This snow is getting moved left and right. So this snow, the dirtier snow, represents the poor, represents the lower class. And this is supported by the idea that it is on the ground, while this one is upon the roof. Now, of course, guys, this quote is pathetic fallacy. This quote has symbolism. There's a lot of language in this quote. But I really want you to analyze how from this quote, we learn how Scrooge is a character that embodies capitalism. And it is through Scrooge that we learn the injustice of society. Scrooge is the smooth snow upon the roof. The Cratchit family are the dirtiest snow upon the ground. You have to be able to make that contrast. Because on the surface, guys, remember, this book looks at how on the surface, if you're rich, then life is supposed to be comfortable. If you're poor, then life is supposed to be tough. You are constantly suffering through turmoil and so on. Smooth white sheet of snow upon the roof and the dirtiest snow upon the ground. Paragraph 2 could talk about how the character of Scrooge embodies capitalism and shows us the injustice, and we can use this quote as a symbol of this injustice. However, guys, to climb our way up the mark scheme, I want you all to make one very important point. One very important point. The snow upon the roof, the snow upon the roof, and the snow upon the ground. In an actual setting, snow upon the roof of buildings, guys, fine, it's untouched. Fine, it's pretty looking. But nobody cares about it. You want to come full circle? No one cares about snow on the roof. When you walk past a building and there's snow on the roof, you might not even notice it. So here, guys, this is a very important point. Even though it's rich and upper class, guys, it has no importance. And I don't mean importance in the money sense. I mean in the importance of real life. The snow upon the ground, that is what people use to do what? Guys, that is what people use to have fun. That is what people use to have good relationships, snow fights and so on. Let's take it further and link it to our text. Scrooge, he sits there like the snow upon the roof, rich, nice house, untouched, no problems on the surface. The Cratchit family, poor, struggling for food, struggling for money, have a very, very tough life, just the way the snow on the ground does. However, which one has more fun? Which one has more enjoyment? Which one has a better existence? You can argue it's the Cratchit family. They have everything but money, yet they have love and they have affection and they have family. Scrooge has nothing but money, yet he looks at them and he feels empty. So we're going to argue, guys. Paragraph 1, Scrooge is an example of a character who has forced loneliness. Paragraph 2, Scrooge is a character who embodies the belief of capitalism. He's a true capitalist. He only cares about himself and he only cares about his money. Therefore, we can use this quote to show the injustice of this belief, the injustice that takes place in society. However, we can end the paragraph by talking about, despite the fact that he represents an untouched, perfect sheet of snow, nobody cares about him. No love, no affection, no relationships. And despite the fact that the poor people on the ground are having a tough life, have no money, those people, they have love, they have affection. So if you look at it as a capitalist will say, ha ha ha, the poor people have no money. But our analysis says, yes, that's what a capitalist would say. However, if you step back and you look at the quote as a whole, this quote shows us through the text that money isn't the most important thing. Because in this text, human relationship, the idea of the atmosphere created through Christmas, is far more important than sitting and staring at your bank balance going up and up and up and up and up. All right, guys, those are 2 paragraphs done. Let's now move on to paragraph number 3. For paragraph number 3, we can use this quote. No space or regret can make amends for one life's opportunity misused. And for this one, I have a very straightforward point. In this quote, guys, the character of Scrooge can be seen as a warning. Guys, the character of Scrooge can be seen as a warning. That is what we can use in this quote. Now, again, even though this quote isn't said by him, as in Scrooge himself, it doesn't mean we can't use it. So, no space or regret can make amends. Guys, can make amends, meaning can fix. Guys, if something needs to be amended, it needs to be fixed. Now, for something to be fixed, it infers that there's a problem. So we are being told here that you can never fix something. But what is it you can't fix? You can never fix one life's opportunity misused. What? Guys, what is this quote saying? What is this quote saying? No space or no regret. No space or no regret can make amend for one life's opportunity misused. Now guys, I want to start by looking at the word regret. Here is feelings. The first part you want to talk about is this. The writer is saying that no matter how bad you feel, no matter how sorry you feel for what's happened, it will never fix a life in which opportunity has been misused. This is probably the most powerful word in the entire quote, misused. But let's look at opportunity first. For the character of Scrooge, what does he see as opportunity? He sees wealth as opportunity, the chance to earn more money. He sees growth, the idea of being able to grow his business. However, this quote implies the idea that in the pursuit of these things, don't forget about love. Don't forget about family. Don't forget about being kind. These are also opportunities. Then you can link the idea of this supporting this. Don't misuse your opportunity. Guys, this for me is the idea of an abuse of maybe power or even an abuse of your blessings. Scrooge is a warning to every single character or even a reader who's reading this text. Just because you've been given an opportunity of wealth and of money and of growth, don't forget to use this to help those around you, to love others, to be kind, to support your family. Don't misuse your wealth. Don't abuse your power. And that is what is shown to the character of Scrooge, because at the beginning of the text, he does not want to help anyone. He is misusing his opportunity. And he doesn't even feel regret. But by the middle of the text, guys, you want to argue that Scrooge does feel regret. When he sees the Cratchit family and he sees what's going on, he starts to think, damn, maybe I shouldn't be this harsh. But it's just a feeling. It's just a feeling. Feelings don't mean nothing. If I feel as though I'm being rude to somebody, but I still carry on being rude to that person, my feeling is irrelevant because my feeling hasn't affected my action. This quote says, don't just sit on regret. Don't just sit on feelings. It's the catalyst. Guys, the catalyst is something that speeds up a reaction in science. This quote is the catalyst to what makes Scrooge ultimately change. Because he's told at the very beginning, listen, my friend, on this journey of meeting the ghost of Christmas past and present and future, you're gonna feel regret. But regret is not enough, because regret cannot change opportunity missed. You have to actually change. So guys, this quote can be seen how the character of Scrooge is a warning for everybody else. Don't be like this guy. Don't be like this guy who was given opportunity. Opportunity here talks about wealth and money and the chance to help people. But you abuse this wealth. You abuse this chance of helping other people because you keep it all to yourself. And that is a good paragraph to write about the character of Scrooge. How the character of Scrooge is seen as a warning for everyone else who believes what he believes. And there were lots of people, guys. There were staunch capitalists who believed and held those thoughts. Now, paragraph number 4, guys, we come full circle. Guys, paragraph number 4, we come full circle. Paragraph number 4, guys, is the idea that it is never too late. Now we come full circle. Remember, guys, a top grade 9 essay for English literature is similar to an A-level English literature essay. In an A-level English literature essay, you have an hypothesis, you have an argument that you want to prove. Now we've come full circle. In paragraph 1, we said Scrooge is lonely, but he's lonely not because of own choice, but because of force. But he doesn't realize this. Paragraph 2, Scrooge then shows us how society is massively injustice because he embodies capitalism. But this is not a good thing, because in paragraph 3, Scrooge is a warning. Don't be like this guy. And paragraph 4, guys, Scrooge shows us the importance, guys, of a second chance. And you want to make sure you use the word redemption. That could be the point that we have for our final paragraph. That Scrooge shows us the importance of a second chance. Scrooge shows us the importance of redemption. He became as good a friend and as good as a master and as a good man. We, straight away, guys, this quote has lots of rule of 3. It has lots of rule of 3. And it has repetition, good, good, and good. So guys, we have rule of 3 when it gives us the 3 qualities that he becomes, and then we have repetition of good, good, and good. Now, guys, what can we say about this quote? He became as good a friend. Now, guys, for me, the first thing I want to talk about is the idea of change, and change being a process. That's what we can infer from the word became. No one's born like this. No one's born perfect. We realize the importance of allowing people time to change. It's a process, so let them go through that process. And then there's 3 parts to the process. He became a good friend, he became a good master, and he became a good man. Friend, master, man. Friend, master, man. Why did the writer talk about these 3 in this particular order? Guys, I want to make you guys understand one thing. Here, I want you to argue that it is a build-up. It is a build-up. It is a build-up. What is the build-up? First, Scrooge had to become a good friend. Meaning, he had to try to make relations. He had to try to be a certain type of person that he was never before. He was cold towards people. He didn't even have any friends. So, remember the first quote, solitary as an oyster. He can't do that anymore. He had to become open and willing for others to come around him. That's the first quality he needed. The second thing that Scrooge had to do is change the kind of boss that he was. Boss, boss, boss. Capitalism, capitalism, capitalism. Master links to the idea of how he is at work. He must destroy the shackles of capitalism that have been put around him. So, the first thing he must do is stop being so isolated and be warm to other people. The second thing he must do is destroy the shackles of capitalism that he never knew he wore and become a good boss. Pay the worker a little bit more. Don't be so harsh when it comes to how you treat the people at work. And if you do this, then you're able to change the most important part of your being, and you're able to impact kind of your personality. You're able to impact your entire life. So guys, that's the 3-step of change that you want to really emphasize. First, he stopped being so unsociable and stopped being so confined and stopped being so lonely. Then he destroyed the shackles of capitalism. After doing these 2 things, guys, he was able to build himself as a personality, and this in turn was able to change his life. Change in this text, guys, is presented, so Scrooge in this text is presented as a character who shows us the importance that everyone deserves a second chance. Everyone deserves a chance at redemption, because it is never too late to change. But change is a process. Change does not happen overnight. And that is why we have an entire book that is literally about the change of this character. Now guys, the quotes that I chose, other than the first one, the other three are not popular quotes, but I chose them on purpose because I didn't want to analyze quotes that everyone else had analyzed already. So imagine guys, you were given an essay, something to do with the character of Scrooge. You could pick and use either all four of these quotes, all four of these paragraphs, or you can pick and choose what you see fits the best. But if I was doing an essay on the character of Scrooge, I would follow what I just did. My first paragraph would talk about how Scrooge is a character who's lonely, but this loneliness is not voluntary, and I would talk about the quote, solitary as an oyster. Paragraph 2, I would talk about how Scrooge is a character who embodies capitalism. He is walking, talking capitalism. And therefore, through Scrooge, we learn about the injustice of society. And we can use the quote about the white snow on the roof, the smooth white snow, and the dirty snow upon the ground. Paragraph 3, Scrooge is a warning. Scrooge is a warning that if people don't change, you will suffer like this man is suffering. And paragraph 4, don't forget, Scrooge is also a character who shows us that change is possible for anyone, redemption is possible for anyone, as long as they are allowed to as long as they are given time, because change is a process. First, you must take off shackle after shackle, and the shackles on Scrooge was the idea of loneliness. Then it was the idea of capitalism. Once you remove these shackles, then you are able to change who you are at your core, change who you are as a man, and be good for other people. These 4 quotes, these 4 points tie in beautifully for an essay on Scrooge when it comes to A Christmas Carol. Now, are these the only 4 quotes and the only 4 points? No, there's so many others you can use. But what I wanted to do was try to give you how a complete essay would look, because each of our 4 points and each of our 4 quotes nicely links to the one that follows it. Alright guys, it's been Mr. Everything English. I hope you found some benefit in this video. As always, take care of yourselves. Peace.